One question which is coming quite repeatedly in various corporate and MBA interviews is South South cooperation the future for India's rise to prominence and the emancipation of the globe? Now, the term here is South South cooperation. And I am here to tell you that in numerous instances, students end up misconstruing the term. South South cooperation is not about cooperation between southern Indian states, it is not about southern hemisphere. So, in this video, I'm going to tell you what is South South cooperation, and therefore, we'll try to cover five broad themes. Number one, the definition of terms global north and global south. Number two, what are the challenges, the commonalities which are bringing the global south countries together? Number three, what are the grievances, the complaints, or the demands against the global north? Number four, what are the various expectations of global South's cooperation among each other? And finally, we'll talk about India's perspective and the way forward. My name is Gagan Singh, and I train students and corporate leaders on themes based on leadership, communication, personality development so that they can build great careers. Please go ahead and like my video, subscribe our channel, and stay tuned because we'll be launching more videos on the similar themes. So here we begin our video on what is South-South cooperation. So let's address the first topic over here. What is the meaning of global South? And for that, it's important to understand what is the meaning of global North. Now, global North is a term which is very loosely and collectively used to define the so-called rich countries. And it's a matter of chance that most of them fall in the northern hemisphere and also probably above the 30-degree latitude line. Now, the countries which are prominent global north are United States, Canada, Europe, Russia, Australia and New Zealand, even though they are in the southern hemisphere, are classified as global north. And finally, within Asia, we have Japan, Israel, and South Korea. So these are the countries which are collectively, in a loose sense, referred to as global north. Now, which are the countries which are referred to as global south? Global south is a term which is used to refer all the Latin American countries, bulk of Asian countries barring Japan, South Korea, Israel, and all of African countries. So now let us go into the history of this terminology. Why did it take place at the very beginning? And for that, we have to go to the post-Second World War world, where the United Nations came up with a classification called First World. First World were the countries which were allies of United States, UK. The Second World was the world which was essentially owing its allegiance to USSR, the then form of present Russia and its allied countries. And Third World was essentially the non-aligned countries. However, the term Third World itself looked very derogatory, and so this term kept on evolving. At times, the classification was given Western countries, Eastern countries. And then thereafter, there were other classifications. However, from around late 50s, 60s, the term Global North and Global South got traction. And it got a very formal constitution when around middle 80s or early 80s, the former chancellor of former Western Germany, Willy Brandt, came up with the concept of Brandt's line. So through this Brandt's line on a simple world map, as you can see in the background, Willy Brandt came up with the concept that countries which are typically 30-degree latitude above of the northern hemisphere are the countries which were originally colonizers. So as a result of their past, their colonizing tendencies, their industrial revolution, the level of education, lifestyle, environmental control, and energy strength, these countries have grown very fast and therefore, as a result, are today powers of the world which are offering good status to its citizens. And so these countries collectively started to be known as Global North. And Global South, as a corollary, were those countries which were left out of the process. These were the countries which were colonized and therefore left impoverished. They ironically had a problem of plenty, which means most of them were quite rich in natural resources. But because of the abundance in natural resources, it somehow led to a situation where there was more of corruption, lower level of education, and therefore, very unfortunately, poor level of development. And that, therefore, became the concept of Global South. Now, the big punchline here is that the underlying element was exploitation. that in the past, over many a decades ago, because of colonization or various other reasons, the global north had in some or the other way been exploiting the global south, leaving them enervated and gaunt where they are today. So this is how this notion came into being. And today it is something which is gaining more traction because at the end of the day, there are hardly about 10 odd countries in the global north. And loosely, we can say about 130 odd countries which could be in this category. There is no formal definition as such, but some numbers claim even higher. So as we begin this video, it's important to understand global south is not a geographical description because there are most countries which are there in the northern hemisphere also. Secondly, it's not the ideological or military association where countries are aligned by certain positive connect. It is because of lack of what they have, the deprivation of what they have, that they have combined together for their greater growth. Now, let's talk about what are the problems which are plaguing the global south. So in the part 2 of this video, I wish to give you 5 E's which can be classified as the common problem of the global south. And when I say global problem, please remember the countries here are very diverse. You have China, which is now a rising power. You have India, which is also rising very fast. You have various other rich countries, including countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, which have had a lot of oil power with them. So, keeping that background in mind, let us universally present the 5 E's. The first E is economy, the simple classification of GDP or GNP per capita. Now, most of these countries are what we may call relatively impoverished. So their GDP levels would be far lower than compared to the global north. The average of global north may be higher, upwards of about 30,000 US dollars, and of global south, now it started varying a lot, could still be a low 4-digit number. India, as an illustration, is about $2,200, $2,300 per capita when seen from 2022 perspective. So economy is a problem. Now, economy is a problem because they have been heavily relying on primary industries, mining, agriculture. So the incomes have failed to keep pace with the global growth. The second problem of the global south then becomes education. Now, unfortunately, the various modern techniques, the larger concept of literacy for the entire country has fallen back. This is also very evident in sustainable development goals where most of the global south is figuring very poorly. So both education standards, reach of education, the gender equality of education dissemination is also very poor. The third factor then is employment. So probably as a fallout of economy and education, employment has also been suffering. There is high rate of joblessness and even the professions are in the primary segment, which is leading to again a cyclical vicious situation of poverty augmentation in these countries. Now the fourth big challenge is energy. Now unfortunately, most of the so-called global south isn't rich in energy sources, so has been really a victim of oil price fluctuation. They have the resources like sunlight, abundance of wind power, but they don't have the technology and the funds to exploit them, harness them. So every time oil prices shoot, the global south goes even more south, metaphorically speaking. The fifth and the last problem is now cropping up is environmental crisis. Ironically, it is being said that is the global north which has had the greatest contribution in polluting the environment over the last 100 odd years, but global south which is paying the price. So very serious augmentation of natural disasters, be it earthquakes, be it fires, drought, flood, depletion of soil, depletion of forest. All of this is something which is happening in the global south at a greater ratio. And to make a double blow, the problem for global south is that in the increasing recognition of controlling the global warming, there is a lot of pressure to slow down on industrialization, which is vital for these countries to increase their income. So the environmental challenge is further plaguing them. So these sort of common pain points are bringing the global south together. Now you may ask that why are we talking about all of this today? Which brings us to part 3 of the video, that what is global south's expectation from global north, or what are the complaints, may we say. And the greatest part over here is sort of originating from the history where global north were predominantly big colonizers. So be it the major countries of Europe or the European Union, UK, or some parts in some other regions. There were challenges related to global north colonizing global south, and therefore exploitation was there. And in that era, the resources were used to help global north grow faster. The Industrial Revolution, subsequent Information Revolution were quite a time said to be financed by the various natural resource incomes which they got from the global south. So, because of this, the overall view is that the problems of global south are a certain amount of derivative of what global north did to them. Therefore, the complaint against global north is predominantly on three fronts. And I may say these are the expectations. Number one, global north is now expected to some way give financial aid support to help global south grow, both in terms of various technology related industries and standard of living. The second expectation is technology support. So most of the global north countries are quite rich on technology in every possible field, but the problem is the intellectual property rights, IPR. Because they have the budgets for R&D, the important cutting edge technology is developed over there, and global south ends up paying huge patent royalties and various other costs and is deprived of the latest tech. And finally, the third expectation is on education and skilling, that the new education methodologies, the growth opportunities, new vocational opportunities must be provided to those who are in the global south. And which other forum to raise it more prominently as compared to G20? And therefore, the relevance of this video today is that very recently, India organized the G20 virtual meet on Voice of Global South. This meeting, which was virtually attended by about 124 countries, was singularly focused on India's mission of trying to let the voice of the global south reach to the bigger forum of G20 presidency. And this, therefore, again vocalized the concept of South-South cooperation. And that brings us to the fourth topic, that what is the prominent prospect areas for South-South cooperation. Now, South-South cooperation in itself is a paradoxical conundrum. The reason being that if all the countries are relatively deprived, depleted, how could they help each other? But that's not the case. We have relatively well-off countries. We have countries which have different strengths. We have China, India, as I said earlier. We have various Middle East oil-rich countries. So there is a great synergy to collaborate on a concept called FEAST, where F stands for financing each other's vital projects. So countries like China, India, and various other rich countries could probably be funding some of the projects, more likely in the African region. So if there is collaboration on such investments, they could mutually grow. The idea is that through mutual co-work, we grow. Then the second E is essentially about education and energy. So since some of the countries are energy rich, there is an expectation that through technology sharing, through various trade agreements, energy independence could be augmented in South-South by helping and collaborating with each other. The third is alliances. Now here it is expected that these South-South countries are facing a lot of regional strifes. So we are hoping that by co-working with each other together, the alliance could help the countries emerge stronger. Then S is all about strategic support. Now strategic support means that in a situation where there are opportunities to work together, the South-South should try to collaborate with each other more often. Whether it is skilling, whether it is strategic projects, collaboration projects, let them work together. And finally, T is technology. That if there are areas where technology transfer is possible, let the South-South work together. Now, this is not easy. The challenges confronting South-South are plenty. So in the last part of this module, let me explain some of the important challenges. The biggest challenge is internal conflicts. Now, just to give as an example, India-Pakistan, India-China. So even though we are all in South-South, there are regional challenges. Similarly, Iran-Iraq, Saudi Arabian conflict. So there are issues and the going is not going to be very easy. The geopolitical conflict among the countries could be a challenge. The second is economic disparity. Even within this forum, there are countries which are richer and there are countries which are poorer. So how much do they want to align with each other is a challenge. The third is intra-alliances, which means at the end of the day, everybody wants to be friends with USA in some way or the other, or at least most of the countries. India too is a part of a major quadrilateral alliance called Quad, where who are our partners? USA, Japan, Australia, and India. Therefore, South-South cooperation has to be confined to something which is constructive, non-military, and not having any kind of negative nuance beyond a certain limit towards the global north. Since the South South cooperation is likely to have its own restrictive factors and therefore has to be really funneled into very specific objectives when it comes to the broad themes and cannot be a very universal alliance. Instead, it could be a fostering ground. And that therefore brings me to the last part, that what is the future for South South? And may I present three things which South South could co work on. Number one, knowledge, skill, and education collaboration among each other. So, across South South countries, sharing of best practices, sharing of various knowledge management platforms, reskilling, vocational employment could be encouraged. Number two, mutual investment and trade. So, if there are opportunities for, say, renewable energy, wind energy, solar energy, if India has certain patented technologies, India could collaborate with South American countries, with other Asian countries, and vice versa. And finally, number three, and probably the most important one over here, is a healthy, constructive relationship with each other, to have alliances where we try to be very collaborative with each other and have a very open mindset for wherever the opportunities are coming across. So, to summarize the video, I'd like to give you how do you answer the question, why is it said that South South is the future for India? So, the answer for this could go as follows, that South South is definitely one important pillar for India to project its positive, constructive presence in the global forum. So, very recently, India conducted the virtual summit where more than 120 countries participated. So, this shows that India is now being recognized as a power of repute. And India could leverage this in three important ways. Number one, through South South cooperation, India could reduce its reliance on various powerful nations and instead work in a collaborative manner with like minded nations to increase trade, finance, investment. Number two, it could also help India increase its education, skill, knowledge by gaining from those countries, and then in return, of course, sharing information with those countries. And thirdly, and probably geopolitically most significant factor, is that India's consistent philosophy of maintaining friendly bipartisan relationships could be demonstrated to the world, and India could be recognized as a power to hold in good esteem, and therefore probably someday have a seat at the United Nations Security Council where India could be a more fair representative voice of the South. So, in these sense, from economic angle, social angle, and geopolitical angle, South South is something that India should really provide its great leadership to. So, with these words, we end this video. As I said, if you liked it, then please press the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos to ace your interviews, group discussions, and build great career.